2x2, 7 rows deep.
And rolling up to the start-finish line. It looks like Asher going a little bit off track as the inside.
As they can. Saber making an amazing dive into turn 1.
And electroshocks off, Eggful gets the move.
But MNU trying to take a move.
Big contact from 5 different punches.
Big incident with Snowdog, our leader.
As we head into town row, it's a big crash. It's a big crash between the two title contenders.
You're ready. Go.
Welcome
all. No, just continue. I worry about you.
Welcome all. Welcome to round 3 of the 7th running of the Simufur GT3 series. We are here in the Eifel mountains of Nürburgring, Germany to race in the Nürburgring. But unlike last season, where we raced in the full 24-hour course with an infamous Nordschleife, we'll be instead racing in the Grand Prix course. I'm your host Suzuka, and alongside me is Nick.
Hi, how are you? Sorry about that. I just worried that you had some issues there. How are you doing? Welcome to commentary. It's been a while since I've been commentating with you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was supposed to be racing, but unfortunately, I've had hardware issues for quite a while until the final blow was my monitor dying. So while waiting out for that to be repaired, I'm just coming back to the commentary box and come back to my other passion here in sim racing.
Yeah, it's good to have you back here though, and yeah, it's nice to see us back at Nürburgring. Fortunately, not at the Nordschleife. I think everyone's a little bit traumatized the last time we've been here, but it doesn't mean that we can't be here on the GP loop. It's definitely a place where we had a lot of races and a much close racing that we have here. The last time I raced here was on Silverchap in the wets, and I must say, we had some very iconic races here last time around.
Definitely, I remember this course all too well. both for the right and the wrong reasons, but the Nürburgring, such a lovely track. Even if you take away that legendary Nordschleife, it's still pretty wonderful to see race cars going around this circuit.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, with all the drivers here, we have 28 drivers. I looking at it right now, 26 right now on the grid. But it's gonna be a pretty busy track. And luckily for us, Nürburgring's it's wide, it's pretty long. So drivers we won't have much issues in terms of lap traffic compared to Brands Hatch. And yeah, the runoff here is a bit safer as well. It is a great run track after all, and I think some of the contenders this week will want to fight for a position to get some of the title points back from a very hard track that is Brands this week.
Speaking of contenders, here is Damon Wareham, our winner last week, fought off Lilith Armstrong in quite a tight battle from what I've been hearing from my cockpit in Brands Hatch. Anyways, Damon Wareham definitely out there to try and defend their current championship hopes in the overall class, especially or the pro class. I don't know how points work, but lo and behold, we have Wareham and Robbie Kelly, another challenger in that Nissan GTR. They are definitely going to be fighting out there if luck goes on their side. I know for sure that luck wasn't there for Brands Hatch last week.
Yeah, and it seems like there's a lot of drivers that might be a little bit faster this time around. I might see some drivers that are usually not fighting in front that for pole position contentions that might actually show up. It seems like drivers like Newt are having a good time with their car, and so, as well as Philip that we see just now in practice before the stream started, that you might see them being in front of the pack more than we actually expect them to be. And speaking of drivers in front, we are missing Jordan Johnson again this week. That's going to be worrying sign for them in the title contention. They're usually the favorites to be winning in the race, but unfortunately, with driver penalties in the first race as well as just having issues in the second race, they're just unable to be fighting for positions. And if they're not showing up this time around, it's going to be a problem for them.
Yeah, that is unfortunate for Johnson. As we look over to Kayla Mooney, who is, as far as I'm aware, leading the Silver Championship standings. Is he? I believe so, but we will look at that later on. But yes, Kayla Mooney on a charge to defend any hopes for a silver title fight right here in that Blue Shark E-Racing BMW M4.
Yeah, and for M as well, we'll have Adam Norhalim in the Mustang fighting for position as well as JPAC in the Porsche. We're gonna have a small little Code 50 practice coming out in a little bit. All drivers are gonna have a new procedure this week. That is gonna be that all drivers will have a live voice control, race control. It's gonna be a new procedure that drivers have to adhere to. This is to make sure that we don't have any sort of issues in terms of Code 50 jump starts, and also helps to alleviate any sort of issues where drivers can't see or hear these race stewards from having any sort of Code 50 incidents, which now we all are on the same page, means that everyone won't have any issues when it comes to jump starts or any sort of accusations of jump starts. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the drivers adapt to these kind of new adapted rules to make sure that everyone has a fair fight.
Yeah, I heard that Code 50 practice well in my headset, and it's working smoothly for these drivers out there. Not a lot of people breaking rules, and hopefully it stays that way for the race itself, in case we do have a severe accident. As we look over to Mark Colborn, haven't seen that face in a while in that RQ9 McLaren. It's been great. It's great to see them back in racing. It's great to see them in that yellow, orange, and tan and black McLaren.
Yeah, RQ9 is definitely a team that we haven't seen much recently in Simufur, but it's great to see Mark back at it again, especially now that we have more drivers currently, more teams than ever. RRP, Cabal, TGR, Blue E Racing. It's nice to see that Simufur has basically become more and more bigger and having more open communities that drivers can, join in and practice with friends. Just have a small kind of support team that helps us develop our hobby in sim racing in SSL.
Yeah, you're seeing Sauce Dragon pulling into the pit lane, probably for a practice pit stop now. Sauce Dragon, I can tell from experience, last week put up a great fight against me in Brands Hatch, and from what I know, I think Sauce Dragon wants to finish high on that gold class category.
I mean, to be fair, everyone wants to finish high in the category. I just remember back in my days, I'm old already, where you kind of fight for being, graduating silvers, and sooner or later you graduate from it. But to get there, it's not as easy as people think. You kind of worry about your racecraft, your consistency outside of just pace, and sometimes you just have drivers that are just good in consistency that lack pace, kind of like me, where you just get promoted to gold just for the fact that you can race. And I think it's a good shout. I think it's a good achievement to have, but some might just not like it. But it depends on how it is.
All right, as we look over to Swingley, let's look over to our standings right now. As you can see, we have Damon Wareham leading the championship overall, and you can see Lily Armstrong edging just close to Wareham, but not quite there. And another notable faces include Larson, Mooney, and your recent race winner, Adam Norhalim, who won last week in Brands Hatch. Fun fact, Norhalim uses a keyboards, and as far as I'm aware, this is just overall standings. Let's look over to the real gold class standings. That's Larson in the lead, and Olsen and Tigris on quite a close battle. The two Tig Gang teammates really in a battle of their own. And we see faces like Newt in gaining positions. Into silver class, let's look over to Kayla Mooney, who has quite the lead in the silver class. But Fabio Saul, quick driver, he's going to be a threat to Mooney's challenge. And so is the recently promoted Sierra Thomas.
Nice to see them all bunched up together. The silver class are really close. And for the AM class, Wolfen P1 coming in not that far ahead, just a point ahead of JPEG. Although JPEG did win one race in the standings, you can see here. But AM class looks to be really close, given that P1 and P2 are a point behind each other, and Manuel, it will be the next car in the GTR.
It's going to be very interesting to see how these championships fold out. These close margins and many competitions, many wins to be secured. Yeah, remember we have Pro, Gold, Silver, and AM. So there's 4 gold trophies to be fighting for this race and for this foreseeable future of Simufur.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see how these drivers will be able to fight for each of their positions. I think for the gold class at least, some of the drivers appreciate some of the separations that we have, because there's always the disparity between the top of the best esports drivers that we have in Simufur and the casual veteran drivers that we have here. And having more classes, some might say that we're segregating a bit too much to have a fair fight, but sometimes it's just making sure that everyone's just fair and everyone just has a chance to win or something. And at the end of the day, it's a pretty good hobby, as we have practice coming into a close, cars coming by the finish line as we're waiting for qualifying to happen in a bit. But the usual suspects are in front. We see Damon in P1 with a 150.04, barely above the sub 55 lap time. But if practice is anything to go by, if they're doing qualifying runs in a bit, I got a feeling some cars will go into the 54s. Who do you think is going to be the one coming into P1 for qualifying this time around?
I mean, all signs point to Damon Wareham at the moment, in my opinion. But it's going to be quite a close one, especially being gold drivers like Adrian Newt, who is almost almost next to Wareham's times, especially rolling in the McLaren. The McLaren seeming to be a solid car as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, each car has their own strong suit. It is Nürburgring after all. It's gonna be cars that prefer long, pretty stable platforms because of all the long sweeping corners that we have. We also kind of promotes cars that are pretty agile, especially in turn 1, as well as in the AMG Mercedes arena. So it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers fare. Some would say the Porsche is pretty favorable here. The McLaren seems to be lacking a little bit behind on the braking, but it seems to be pretty good on sort of long power corners as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers adapt to the machines that we have, and the balance of performance will definitely help to make sure that everyone's on as much of an equal playing field as possible.
JPEG, the first AM class driver, rolling out for this qualifying session. Remember, each class AM class has 10 minutes to set a qualifying lap time. The next 10 minutes will be our silver class drivers, and the final 10 will be our pro and gold class drivers. But for now, let's put our focus on the AM class as we see JPEG Fox and Wolfen Foxdale, Adam Norlin roll out to begin their qualifying laps as soon as they complete a whole revolution around this circuit.
Oh yeah, there's only 5 AM drivers here, but we're definitely focusing on JPEG right now on track. But as they do their warm-up, JPEG just now weaving a little bit left and right just to get a little bit of the tires temperature on the surface. But you don't want to weave that much because you're gonna start to scrub the tires, and that won't be good for any sort of grip coming down into the NGK chicane right before they start finish straight at the Coca-Cola curve. It's gonna be a very interesting start. It's gonna go on board with JPEG at the start of their lap, coming down into the start finish straight across the line, and here we go, start of the new lap on the brake. It should be about time already, but we're going to start at the braking zone, about 100 meter burst and brake hard on the brakes. Make sure that you're stable coming into the hairpin, that is Hallhaken, before you go into the Mercedes arena. You don't go there on the M24, but on this GP layout you definitely go into the Mercedes arena on the inside, coming out a little bit wide here before you step on the brakes hard here and hug it on the inside. You don't want to run wide here because you'll get immediate right hairpin here as well, and you gotta make sure you have a good exit before you have a small little run into the Valvoline curve right in front of us. Make sure that you keep the car straight Some people go a little bit wide here, but Lamb drivers try to keep it as clean as possible. Brake hard before the tarmac transition turn in, and you gotta brake again immediately for the forward curve. A little bit of a tricky corner here because it looks like a 98-degree corner, but it's more of a hairpin more than anything. Down into the long downhill into downlock curve. You gotta brake a bit hard here, but gotta make sure you don't lock up the brakes, or else you don't make the hairpin that is the downlock curve. It's gonna be very tricky. We gotta be patient on power before we get the exit into Schumacher S. Some cars will take this flat out. I think we have to do a slight bit of lift here, but some cars will take the curve like JPEG does on both sides of the curve before go on into the Michelin curve, which is right here. Brake at the 100-meter board, come in on the apex. Some will mount the curve a little bit, but don't go too wide here. Also invalidate. I think it's going to be JPEG invalidating their lap time coming into war standard curve. So it's going to be a second attempt for JPEG, but we still have the lap to continue. Down into Ad Van Bogen, usually the very flat out right-hander. If you don't mount the curves though, also get a little bit of a problem there before you come into the chicane, notorious chicane. Brake about 75-meter board right there in between the 50 and 100-meter boards. Take both chicanes carefully and not to spin out there before you take the brakes again, and that will be a lap at the Coca-Cola curve at Nürburgring, and it's going to be a very tricky run for every driver here, and it's going to be very tricky for the Porsche as well because of how dancy this car is.
Is absolutely right, and unfortunately JPEG Fox had a invalid lap time, so that lap doesn't count. Whose lap counts, however, is Noralim and Wolfen Foxdale. Noralim on pole position at the moment.
Yeah, interesting to see that the Am's already in the 56. Adam in the Mustang has always been a fast driver. It's just that they gotta work on a little bit on their consistency, but you can't blame them. They're on a keyboard. They definitely have the skills to basically back up the fact that they can drive fast. It's just more of the inability to be consistent because of the hardware they're on. But it doesn't mean that they can't race with us. They're still very competent on track. They just, it's just dealing with the cards they dealt with, and nice to see that they're pushing it all the way with the Mustang that you have here.
That's absolutely right. As we look over to Thomas Schwartz in that NSX, haven't seen that face in Brands Hatch, but from what I've heard, they were in Imola last 2 weeks ago. Thomas Schwartz trying to make a return to the racing as he pilots that NSX around the Valvoline and Ford curves. The NSX, as from what I've heard, is a pretty tricky car on ACC. We've seen people struggling in that, especially from what I witnessed in Brands Hatch. Skyler did not have the greatest time with the NSX. However, that doesn't mean it's a car however, people still pick that car because, hey, I gotta admit, it's a pretty nice looking car.
Or the Honda or the Acura, some would put it as, is a really short wheelbase car. So what happens is that usually drivers will have to be pretty aggressive on taking the car. You can't take it as safe as you would say the 296 or the BMWs. So you gotta have to basically rotate the car everywhere. It's not good for the tire wear, and it's not going to be good in terms of making sure the car is stable. But if you can get the pace out of it, it's a pretty fast car. The BOP definitely helps it a lot here as well. So we will hope to see that the Honda is able to hold it onto this car, onto this track at Nürburgring. But given that there's a reason it's unpopular, but it doesn't mean that it's not competent. You just have to kind of push it 110% to make it anywhere near a competitive pace right here.
At the moment, Noralim is on pole by 2 seconds. That's a pretty huge gap for both JPEG Fox and Wolfen Foxdale to cover off. But that BMW is on a charge right now, and from what I'm seeing in my Delta, both drivers are gaining. So there's still time left to be taken, and there's still time to fight for that pole position.
Definitely more time to be had, but both with improvements of close to 10th, definitely very, very far away from the 156 that Adam has set in the Mustang. So unless they can do a Hail Mary, gain a second or more, it's gonna be a very far gap between Adam in the M class. But you gotta remember, qualifying doesn't dictate your M positions. It's the race, and we have an hour race here after qualifying, and that's when the results really happen. And if you don't survive the race, there's no point qualifying in front, can you? Do you now?
It's absolutely true. Qualifying is one thing, but the whole race is another thing. 1 hour of this grueling track, and you're having to battle a lot of drivers side to side. And sometimes that could go wrong, as you can see in Brands Hatch last week. Definitely went wrong for a lot of drivers, but in the end, that's just racing. As we see Wolf and Foxtail head into the Coca-Cola curve, will it be a lap time that will send them ahead of JPEG, maybe ahead of Norlim? But unfortunately,
No,
it doesn't
unfortunately it
look
won't
quite
be.
right.
No, they just set a last lap of, I think that's gonna be a last lap of a 158.4. So still far away, but JPEG set at 157.9. So definitely an improvement. Slightly closer between now it's in the sub 58s, but they definitely still need to be closer to be in the sub 57s to have any shot with Adam in front.
At the moment for AM cars on track, from what I'm seeing in the radar, looks like Lewandowski, member of the Blue Shark E-Racing Junior team, has pulled out. So I think that's their day done in qualifying, and I'm pretty sure they just want to focus on the race itself. Meanwhile, looking over on the grid, we have Thomas Schwartz still fighting in that NSX. They're 5 seconds off Norlim, but hey, track time is track time, and if they can get the gap, if they can get the gap closer, that would be great progress for them.
Definitely. And speaking of great progress, they only have about 40 seconds remaining before qualifying ends for the M class, before the next class goes out. So drivers that are on their lap definitely have to push it, and they will have to make sure they get, if they want to take another lap, they have to cross the line before the timer runs out, because when they run out, they're required to return to the pits immediately. No cooldown lap given to these drivers. If they want to do their practice, pit stop practice, they have to do this now, sacrifice the lap time they have right now, or they'll have to basically go in without practice, and that's definitely inadvisable. But some drivers have done it. It's more of like making sure that you have the knowledge of the pit entry for this place, or else you're gonna get yourself a stop-go penalty in the race.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is getting a next lap, and this is the last qualifying lap for the AM class as JPEG Fox crosses the line. Will it be an improvement? Not quite. They lock in on the front row, but Wolf and Foxtail, no time gain either, and Schwartz is off in the gravel. So that is it for the AM class qualifying. It's Norlim on pole, JPEG Fox P2, and Wolf and Foxtail in P3.
Amazing run by the Mustang right here. 56-0 for an M class. I got a feeling that some of the silver drivers might slot in between Adam as well. So it's going to be interesting for the silver cars that are out here, because they definitely don't want to be fighting for a position that they don't get points for. So hopefully they'll be having fingers crossed that they'll be pushing ahead of them. But a 56 is a pretty hard time to get. For the silver class, so they really hope they can push it just to be in front, or else it's going to be weird to have a M class car in front of the silver gang right here.
As you see, Aras Volpes, one of the challengers for the silver title, even or the silver podiums. Now Aras has been quite a solid driver that's been under the radar in that Lamborghini. They've been constantly fighting some of the golds. They've been challenging a lot of the top silvers out here. It will be interesting to see what that Lamborghini can do here in the Nürburgring.
Yeah, Ours has always been a pretty solid driver. It's always unfortunate that they get tangled up incidents here and there, and overall they definitely have the pace. They definitely are a capable driver. It's just sometimes stuff happens, and it's always nice to see that RS still comes back and fights for the positions again. At the end of the day, we all are here to challenge ourselves, and it's great to see that the silver driver that is Aura is still here with us as they're about to start their flying lap for qualifying. It's going to be the first silver driver out. Behind them will be Calborn in the McLaren. It's going to be a few of the silver drivers going to gun for it. Some might want a tow from a different car, but I think most of them will prefer to be on their own. The tow might get them some benefits, but the dirty air will not be beneficial for them for the long sweeping corners that may or may not affect them in terms of lap times.
Yeah, absolutely. Nürburgring is a mix of corners that require your downforce and optimum aerodynamic grip, but also straight line sectors where you really want that tow. So it's a fine balance on whether you want the slipstream or just clean air in general. But looks like Auras leading this train, and Kayla Mooney, one of the first drivers to be considering using the tow. of that Lamborghini.
Oh, yeah, definitely a possible shout, but the gap's a bit far, so I don't think that's gonna be possible for them. But it's definitely a little bit helps here and there, so definitely trying to push it as hard as possible. Not too wide though. Also gonna lose a bunch of time here at Dunlop Curve, but the BMW pretty strong here, fighting against the Lamborghini. So it's always interesting for me, at least, to see all the GT3 cars fighting each other. Some of them big as a boat, but some of them tiny as ever. It's always interesting to see that. Despite the size difference, the balance of performance makes sure that they're all fighting for positions very equally here.
That is right, and there is Skylar Vixen in that Honda wanting to redeem themselves after a... how do I describe it? I think a day that you definitely want to forget at Brands Hatch. They've been having a pretty tricky time spinning out and having incidents, but that Honda, I'm pretty sure, wants to fight back, wants to make a comeback here in the Nürburgring circuit.
Yeah, definitely a very hard car to tame in Brands, given how hard you had to push the Honda. So it's nice to see them here. Whereas though, setting a 155.5, a very, very fast time for the Lamborghini here, and the silver drivers are slowly setting the times to 155.4, 155.8, and that Sad Cat with the 155.3, very blistering lap time in the Lamborghini. The Lamborghini seems to be a favorite among the silver class here, and definitely shows that they definitely can fly past here as the lap time starts to fall in. Shallow in the Lexus always been the car that shows that they have top speed to basically hang around here, and definitely shows with 155.2 the gap's pretty close against these drivers right now.
Yeah, the Lexus, one of the more powerful cars out here on track. It doesn't have a lot of downforce, but hell, it has a lot of power. And with the BOP we have, all that weight, a lot of its weight is dropped off. I believe that is minus 40 kilos of weight, so the Lexus will be definitely enjoying the straight line sections that the Nürburgring will offer. As we look over to Swingley in that Porsche, which is quite literally the polar opposite of a Lexus. It's quite a nimble car, but its top speed, I haven't heard a lot of good things about, but it's still a solid car because of how nimble it is with that rear engine.
Well, the 992 is definitely a big improvement compared to the 991 Porsche. So definitely in terms of power-wise, it's definitely not as far behind compared to the rest of the grid, but it's definitely not something that stands out among the rest of the grid. What it does stand out though is its amazing braking performance, as well as if your ability to tame the car is right, the rotational speed on this car is just insane. You can just go send it through most corners and it's gonna be fine. It doesn't have the temperamental unable to touch curb characteristic that some of the mid-engine cars have, and it's just a powerhouse in the wet. So it's nice to see that Swingley's representing the Porsche in the silver class. Usually you don't see them much in the silver class, you see them much in the pro class and the platinum class. So nice to see that the times have the silver class is driving in. Whereas set at 155.1, the driver slowly chipping away at times. Will we see a sub 54, a sub 55 in the silver class? Maybe, we'll see.
Yeah, at the moment it's still Fabio Sol stealing pole position once again by a tenth of a second. So this qualifying grid is going to be pretty close here in the silver class. But at the moment it's Lexus, Lamborghini, and Lamborghini, with Fabio Sol in pole position so far. But behind them are the Lambos of Auraz and Sad Cat.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see, and it's also surprising to see that no other manufacturer is on top with them as well. I usually expect the McLaren or even the Porsche be up there, especially the BMW. When we were in Silver Champ a few years ago, it was basically fighting against the Ferraris, and this time around we don't see any Ferraris on the grid this time around, but we do see a BMW, and unfortunately the BMW is definitely struggling a little bit with against the balance of performance with the pace of the rest of the grid.
Hey, don't count out Kayla Mooney just yet, because they have a stonking lap time, but it looks like unfortunately they invalidated by going wide on the, I believe, Michelin curve. Yeah, Michelin curve. It's really easy to get the track limits wrong there, so that's going to be square one for Kayla Mooney. However, Swingley with a 8/10 delta off their qualifying best So let's see what that Porsche can do. Clipping the NGK chicane curves as hard as he can into Coca-Cola curve. What can the number 279 Garrett 42 Porsche do? It will be a quite a close one, but that was quite wide, so that will lose their time, but it's enough for P4. And speaking of, Skylar Vixen on silver class pole position with that Honda.
Yeah, 154.9, the first driver. Actually, is it the first one? It might be the second one to breach the 155s, because we have Saka as well right behind them. 2,000ths of a second, 154.892 compared to Skylar's 154.890. Definitely a very, very, very close fight within the zero class, and it's gonna be drivers having to push it the very last time, because we only have a minute and a half remaining. This is gonna be the final lap for most drivers, and they definitely have to make every second, every inch of the track count, and make sure to not invalidate, because it's gonna be the last time they will be able to set a lap time, and it's gonna be interesting to see who's gonna stay in front and who's not gonna stay in front in this qualifying.
Speaking of, we do have a favorite for pole position here, Auras Volpez. I am looking at the times. I am looking at the Delta. They are on point. They're really close to a pole position. They might just fight for the top 3, but unfortunately losing time off the Schumacher S. However, there's still time to be gained for that Lamborghini. Coming into Michelin, coming into Warsteiner. It's going to be 2 slow medium speed corners, but put the power down into the back straight, coming into Advan Bogan. Can Auras Volpez, they're currently 2/10 off their best Delta. They could steal pole position here, but only if they get the NGK chicane right. But let's look at that Lambo, quite clean on those curves. A bit
No, invalidated.
Yeah, that unfortunately invalidates Auras qualifying time. It was close, but not quite for the number 406 Lamborghini.
Got a little bit too greedy at the NGK chicane. You gotta make sure you gotta chain it all right, or else you're gonna have issues, and that's gonna be Kalmari snatching away the position away from Auras. He just got a 155.1. Unfortunately for Auras, starting P1 in qualifying, slowly got chipped away, but currently still P5, still pretty strong in qualifying, but definitely a lot of faster drivers ahead. The gap between P1 to P5, 2/10 among each other, so it's gonna be a very, very, very close fight for silver class if all the drivers are consistent with their representative pace right now.
Yeah, Fabio Sal on a quick lap, but unfortunately that lap was invalid, and I believe that Auras crossed the line before the 10-minute mark, so technically, I think that's cut Auras' qualifying for now, and that is, hold on, what?
No, that's invalidated. That is invalidated, and it's gonna be the pro class that's gonna go out right now. So they definitely have to put the car on the side in a bit if they want to not get marked by the stewards. But for now, it's gonna be the pro class that's gonna go out onto the grid slowly for their warm-up lap.
I believe our radars are messing with us, because I see Fabio Sal with that lap was valid, but yes, you are right. The pro class and the gold class are ready to roll out, and the first one in that queue, I believe, is Saber Kitsune leading that train in that Nissan GTR, that blue and white and yellow, an icon here in Simufur, and behind them another GTR of Robbie Kelly. It looks like it's GTR train all the way, but our pro and gold class is quite a huge field, so you'll see a lot of drivers trying to fight for any positions.
Yeah, definitely, but also gotta remember Robert Kelly that they can't be too close to the car ahead. Overtaking's not really allowed in qualifying, so it's up to the drivers to make up that space, and if you really want the tow, you gotta remember that if you're really that fast on the car, it's gonna have an issue.
Here we go as we look on board of the number 523 Nissan GTR of Saber Kitsune. A long main straight for here in the Nürburgring GP course until you do hard braking into Hoghaken. Get really tight on that hairpin. The GTR not the most nimble car, but all that weight from the BOP helping it a little bit more here into Mercedes Arena. Quite slippy, but go as wide as you can without invalidating and try and get into that corner without invalidating. Now this area, very notorious. I personally hate this section. Go wide just a little bit and that's your lap time over, but seems that Saber has done everything correctly. Coming into Valvoline curve, coming into Ford curve, the two medium speed corners, you're gonna have to align your car to have an optimal exit. Go as wide as you can without touching the kitty litter, and it's power down into Dunlop curve. Hard braking, stay on the inside as much as you want. You could probably do a late apex around here to optimize your lap time and get as wide as you can, because ahead is a high-speed section, the Schumacher S. Go left, go right, it's going to be really tricky in that GTR, but Saber doing it quite nicely. Hard braking into, I believe that is now Valvoline and Ford curves. Be careful around here. We've seen a lot of people invalidate their lap times because of the Valvoline exit. Coming into Ford, pull out, go as fast as you can, put the power down because it's full throttle. It's into this back straight, into Advan Bogen, and back to hard braking, into the NGK chicane. Now clip those curves as much as you want if your car can handle it. And it looks like Saber's car can definitely handle those curves, and into the final corner of Coca-Cola curve.
It's definitely a very interesting lap from Saber. What will the lap time be? That's gonna be a 1:54.6. Definitely the pros. Again, reaching in. Actually, no, that's not it. That's gonna be Saber didn't get a 54.6. Saber did a 55.1. So definitely not as fast as the fastest pros there, but his times are shining slow in. Fabio though still in P1 with a 54.6. All the cars that came in just then are still behind Fabio right now in P1. So definitely interesting to see our class still topping the leaderboard. But I got a feeling that's not gonna be holding on for some time in a bit.
Yeah, keep in mind these tires are still pretty cold and the fuel tanks are pretty high at the moment. So these lap times won't be that way in the end. They will be getting quicker and quicker. Those times will just tumble down until we see someone eventually break into Fabio Sal's lap time, and that will be our pro and gold class. As we see Damon Wareham looking into the Delta, they're almost 2/10 down on their personal best, trying to capitalize on this circuit, trying to defend their championship lead.
Yeah, I definitely see them pushing really hard here. I'm not too sure about the conditions, but the temperature might be increasing ever so slightly as the session goes on. But the track is definitely getting more and more rubbed in, so drivers definitely can push harder than ever in these kind of conditions as the drivers push it as much as possible. Damon though, losing a bit of time on those two corners here, not gaining as much time as you expect them to be having to be able to be in P1. Currently, they're projected to be about a 54.7-ish. That will still not be enough for Fabio though. But Lily Armstrong, the car ahead of Damon right now, in the Porsche, pushing as hard as possible on the controller, is also expected to be ending at the same time as well. So we'll have to see how fast these drivers can push it. Robert Kelly though just crossed the line there at 154.9. Damon though just did a 154.6. So definitely still behind Fabio in the Lexus, but definitely have to push it hard as we just passed 4 minutes remaining in this session. So drivers don't have much time left to put in their qualifying laps.
Yeah, and as you saw earlier, Lily Armstrong stole pole position overall by 3 thousandths of a second. The margins here are insane. And you can see Damon Wareham quite close as well. So this qualifying could be closer than ever as these drivers continue to find the optimal lap time. As we look over to Chris in that Tig Gang Racing Mercedes-Benz. They're definitely a challenger, but unfortunately, their lap time does not look up. Although they could capitalize on the latter sections, especially with the Mercedes, quite a powerful car.
You say that they're not competitive, but you gotta remember, the gap between P1 to P4 now is 1/10 of a second. That's how close they are. They might be five positions down on the grid, but the gap is just 1.5 tenths. It's pretty close. Chris just got to push and find that last remaining tenth here and there, and that's gonna be P1 for them at this rate. But doesn't mean that the rest of the drivers are lacking as well. Damon already 2/10, close to 2/10 ahead of their personal best, so definitely have more time to be had here. Adrian Newt currently 2/10 up on their personal best as well. So the entire grid is pushing it as hard as possible in these kind of conditions. So definitely not everyone's not sleeping on their lap time right now. Everyone's pushing as hard as possible. A car just went out in the gravel in the NGK chicane, so definitely a distraction for Aiden right here at P4. So definitely everyone's pushing as much as possible. That's going to be our Robert Kelly just pushing a little bit too hard, and it's going to be another lap for them.
And that's Aiden. I was about to say that was really smooth through the NGK chicane, and that is pole position overall for Aiden Larson. Keep in mind, Aiden is a gold class driver, so our pros and golds getting quite scattered as we speak. As we look over to Newt, who is gaining massive time, 4/10 in that McLaren, coming into the final two challenging corners, the NGK chicane and the Coca-Cola curve. Can that Blue Shark E-Racing McLaren steal pole position? It's quite a close margin. Putting the power down, they're 4/10. This is going to be pole position for sure. And Adrian Newt is on pole position for now.
Yeah, 154.3. These cars are insanely quick. We're not sure how much more the drivers can extract the time out of it. Maybe a 53 if we're that fast, but the 54s are already impressively fast for these cars. These drivers are definitely not slouching at all, and everyone's pushing as hard as possible. Alexander Vanderwood, the P17 right now in the Lexus, not really an easy car to tame. Definitely can tell by the fact, but given that they have other Lexuses in front of them, this is definitely means that the car can do it. It's just more of if your car is set up right, and also if the conditions can be met to make sure that they can tame the car just right for these kind of lap times.
I am seeing green deltas everywhere. The track is ramping up, and these drivers are just getting faster and faster the more fuel they burn. And while the tires wear, it's not going to be too much, as you can see. Robbie Kelly having a little drift on the NGK chicane, and that is not optimal if you want to set a fast quali time.
Yeah, definitely gonna lose them a little bit of time, but it's still 4/10 up from the previous, and it's gonna be juggling. The time's just juggling all the time. Larson still in P2. Damon just stole Saber's time for P3, and Saber's still in P4. Robbie's in P5. Lily currently the one right now in P6, and the times are just so close right now. Everyone's just fighting for positions as the time ticks down. 3, 2, 1. It's gonna be qualifying ending, and it's gonna be the last lap for some of the drivers. It's going to be the drivers that are going to cross the line. It'll be the end of their qualifying.
Just when you think you can't gain enough time, here comes Adrian Newt. On my Delta, they're 6/10. They're about to break the 1 minute 54 barrier here, and they do so with a 153.7 and guaranteed pole position for Adrian Newt, unless one of these drivers here can put up a challenge. But as far as the Delta show, I don't think a lot of people are putting up a lap time as insane as that.
These are insane times as the drivers start to slowly cross the line. I wouldn't even imagine being in the 54s, and let alone in the 53s. So they're definitely going to be a very, very tight fight as Aiden just invalidates the lap times coming into the Schumacher, as it's going to be so some cars still have their running lap. Commonly Philip in P15. You know, they were expected to be higher up, but I think there's some technical issues currently, so they're currently chasing for that lap time that they have lost previously. But it's going to be interesting to see how their race goes later on, as they're slowly coming in on the last few corners before they finish a lap time here.
Okay, and from my radar, as you can see, Philip Beckervold on a 4/10 improvement so far, but more drivers are coming in with their fastest lap times. Damon Wareham currently 2/10 off their personal best as they head into the final corner from my point of view, and it's Wareham not improving into P2 by 5/10, but here comes Beckervold. They have been on a charge right now, currently 1.2 seconds off, but 6/10 improvement will see them in, I believe that is P3. Philip Beckervold out of nowhere into the top 3.
Yeah, honestly kind of expected given the pace that we saw in practice. I think they had some technical issues in qualifying, because I have not seen them on track and the entire time of qualifying. But glad to see them being able to go on an outlap right before the end of qualifying and be able to set a lap time. That's going to be very nice to see Philip in the Mustang in P3, and it's nice to see Newt in the McLaren P1 as well as Damon in P2. Nice to see all the car drivers that we're used to in front, and shows that everyone's really prepared for Nürburgring this time around.
Everywhere I go, I cannot escape it. McLaren front row in Formula One. I'm not yeah, I think qualifying was different, but McLaren 1-2 in Formula One a lot of the time. But right now, McLaren front row here in Simufur. I can't escape it. But it's Adrian Newt and Damon Wareham representing McLaren in the front row, with Philip Beckvold in that Mustang and Lilith Armstrong in that Porsche. It's going to be quite an interesting fight here, especially considering that Adrian Newt and I believe Philip Beckvold are gold class drivers. So it's interesting to see what they'll do and how they'll play compared to the pro field.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the other class as well, Fabio right now in P8, so far away from Skylar in P13. There's so many cars in between them. Fabio just has to make sure they stay in between the gold class, just so they get safety gap between the rest of the silver class right behind them. And it's gonna be no issues for them. The only car that Skylar will be fighting will be Sadcat right behind them, before they have a great gap between two pro drivers, before they'll get Callum Mooney in P17. Very nice gap for the silver class, but the M class though, Adams in first in class in P23, and it's gonna have Coburn in P24 before they have JPAC in P25, and that's gonna be the rest of the M class right now at the back of the grid. But doesn't mean that they can't race. They just gotta make sure they keep it alive, make sure there's no issues, make sure there's no code 50. Some drivers might want a code 50 because that basically stagnates the race and basically makes sure that we have a safe start. But we always love a race that doesn't have any much incidents doing now.
As the grid starts to grid up, let's look over. Let's look over at our grid. As you can see, Nick, Adrian Newt on pole, but Nick, take it away from me.
Yeah, it's going to be Adrian Newt in the Blue Shark E Racing car in the McLaren P1. It's going to be Damon representing RRP in the McLaren P2. Nice to see two different teams. The third team on the grid will be Cabal, Philip Beckvold in P3 with the Ford Mustang, Lily Armstrong driving in the Porsche in P4. Aiden, our first Lexus on the grid in P5, and then behind them will be Sabre, our first Nissan GTR in P6. Robbie Kelly this time though, a little bit slow. Doesn't mean that they're very slow, they're just not qualifying as fast as the rest of the grid in TGR in P7. Fabio Saul in the Lexus in P8. Chris the Gator, our first AMG on the grid. Nice to see an AMG on the grid right now in P9. Shosh Dragon in the Confuzzle Mustang in P10. Nice to see them here. Alex Vanderwold, the car that was pretty slow. We were expecting to not that didn't qualify that much high up, but now in P11. Nice to see them here. Vossi in the Porsche in P12. Nice to see Vossi right here. Skylar though, nice qualifying in the silver class in P13 in the Honda. Nice to see them here. Sadcat, their competitor right behind them in the Lamborghini in P14. Nicholas Zahn in the Lexus for Cabal Racing in P15. Parker Olsen for T-Gang Racing in the McLaren for P16. Callum Mooney, the BMW. Nice to see him BMW on the grid for Blue Shark E Racing in P17. RS Lopez. Nice to see them doing just fine. So definitely have to pick up the pace for at P18. Wolf Kagekiyo in the Aston Martin, trusted as ever at P19. Jasper Swingley in the G42. That's Porsche in P20. Zephyr in P21 for RRP in the McLaren. 30 seconds remaining and it was going to be Oily Rags in P22 for Blue Shark E Racing in the Aston Martin. Adam Norhalim, our M-Class pole driver right now in Ford Mustang in P23. Mark Coburn, RK9 Motorsports driver in the McLaren. P25 will be JPAC Fox, our second M driver here. P25. P26 will see Wolf in Foxdale in the BMW for Blue Shark E Racing. Thomas Swartz, our independent driver for P27 in the Black Grid K9s for Honda NSX. And that's Matt. Can you help me with this name? I'm a bit bad at that name.
Lewandowski.
Yeah, at P28 in the Blue Shark. And it's going to be Manuel ending the grid at P29 for Tokyo Ghost Racing in the Nissan GTR.
Yeah, that will wrap up our grid as our drivers are starting to roll out on our formation lap. So we have Newt's McLaren and Azur's McLaren leading the pack throughout this whole circuit just to get the tires warm, just to get their brakes warm, because that will all matter as they will head into turn 1.
Yeah, drivers need to warm up the tires, but not too warm though. If you scrub the tires, it's gonna be basically no grip at the start of the race. So you gotta make sure you gotta blend the mixtures between using brakes to heat up your tire, the core temperature, or just a little bit of weaving, not too aggressive though, to put in a little bit of temperature on the surface, just so that the tires are heated up evenly for the race. Drivers might decide to use pad 1s or maybe pad 2s depending how aggressive their driving is. I would prefer pad 2s for racing, but some drivers swear by pad 1s because we are in a sprint race after all, and the first pad 1s are always the most aggressive brakes. But if you're very sensitive to brake fade, you definitely do not want to be on pad 1. So it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers behave amongst their setups, behave amongst their pit strategy, and also remember their pit strategy as well. You have to pit in this race. If you don't, you're gonna have penalties awarded to you, and it's not gonna be fun. So drivers have to think about all this on the formation lap right before grid start.
I mean, personally, I've always sworn by pad 1s. I've worn pad 1s racing in Brands Hatch, which I could get away with because it was pretty chilly out there. But yeah, you were talking about pit window, so 40 minutes from 40 minutes remaining to 20 minutes remaining of this race, drivers will have to pit for tires and fuel. Well, the tires are mandatory, but you might as well have to top up with some fuel to get to go long and to get light on your first stint actually, because splitting your fuel actually helps a lot. It takes off the weight. And for almost every driver here with common sense, well, they're splitting the fuel between their 2 stints.
Well, yeah, usually in a different setting, usually refueling will take the longest, but given that the tire change is already 30 seconds in this race, and usually your refueling, even for a fuel tank, finishes within your tire changing window, it's a no-brainer to at least make the car a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun for the drivers involved to have any sort of agility to the car. Some cars like the Porsche prefer to have some weight in the front, because when the fuel tank's in the front and we have no weight and you're in qualifying trim, you basically have a very understeered car. So some drivers might prefer to have some weight in the front, some drivers prefer to not have weight. So it's really up to what kind of perspective these drivers want, and as they're ready to get double file into the chicane before the final corner for the start of the race.
Yeah, the drivers are going double file as you speak. Adrian Newt and Damon Wareham leading that McLaren front row field into turn 1, which will be a pretty tricky corner because it's hard braking to turn 1. But anyways, here come the drivers lining up for the grid, waiting for the green light.
Oh, it's gonna be good. Go, go, go.
And we're underway here in the Nürburgring. Great start for Newt. Wareham closing in just a bit, but I think it's Newt who has a solid inside line coming into turn 1. Hard braking. Who will come out on top? It looks like Adrian Newt, but Wareham fighting it out. But Newt hanging it around the outside and leads this opening lap.
Yeah, definitely close the door on Damon, make sure that they have this place secured. That means that no side-by-side racing will be had, and it's going to be good for them because they don't want to be side-by-side and have Lily right behind them fighting for positions. Though Philip fallen back immensely as Lily and Saber has increased their positions right here. Definitely a little bit of a weak start for Philip, but definitely a lot of time for you to catch up on all the issues right here. But it's definitely slowly falling back, though Robbie Kelly just took another position from Philip. So Philip's not all the way down in P7, definitely not used to the aggressive racing that we have here in Simufur, as all the drivers slowly get the positions and settle down for any sort of issues that they have in the race though. But we see that Alexander from P11 has slowly got positions right now in P10. So nice to see all the drivers getting into a cell gap within the grid.
From what I'm seeing in my radar, it looks like Beckevold and Zephyr have drive-through penalties for being out of position on race start or even jumping the start. So that's going to be really tough, as they have to by the end of this lap at this point to cross the pit lane, and that's going to be a long wait, longer than you anticipate, as we can see Fossey pounding behind the rear end of Sauce Dragon, but saving it for later, tucking into the slipstream.
Yeah, everyone's slowly getting themselves settled in. You kind of want to make sure that you don't want to fight too much at the start though, because if you do, you might lose a position here and there. Everyone's just so tight together. You want to make sure that you're single file, get the gap away as soon as possible, and only do moves when it's basically strategic right now. Chris on the back of Fabio though, it might be a good strategic move if they can make a dive here, but you can see here the Lexus is just pulling away from the AMG in front. The top speed definitely helping the car to make sure they stay ahead, but how much could they stay ahead though? I say, oh, tap! That's gonna be a tap, Chris.
Rather unfortunate, and from what I'm hearing, we are having a code 50 right now, and yeah, rather unfortunate. I think Chris got a bit too opportunistic on that and just accidentally pit maneuvered Saul, and that's going to be a disappointment for Fabio Saul because they were on the lead of the silver class, but not now with that incident bogging him down to I don't know, but they're quite down there, which is unfortunate. And as you can see, Chris letting Fabio by to lessen the severity of that penalty.
I think it's also just sportsmanship regardless of penalty or not. I think Chris definitely felt bad that they have accidentally spun Fabio. I think for them, I think they will actually appreciate that the coffee they did take into fact that basically reduces the severity of the time loss from letting Chris letting the position back, because everyone's basically slowed down. You know, everyone's still bunched up. You won't have any sort of issues in terms of having to fight back for positions, and it's going to be nice to see that they are able to still fight. And it's going to tap the back off. That's another type with Oily Rex. It's going to be Phaser. Can't do that here if you're going to have issues here, and that's going to be unfortunate for Oily Rex because they got pushed away by Phaser, by Adam right here in the Dunlop curve.
Yeah, and they were a bit too argy-bargy here. Norlim hitting, getting a little bit argy-bargy with, together with Oily Rex, and that did not end well for sure. And I did want to point out, we do have a silver class battle here between Blade Volcalakio, Caleb Mooney, and RS Wolpes as Thomas Schwartz slows down. I believe they have spun that Honda as they rejoin the racing circuit.
Yeah, definitely difficult to see the drivers are struggling a little bit on the race pace. We all did qualify pretty well, but at the end of the day, like we said, race doesn't end at the start finish race. The race ends at the end of the hour, so you gotta make sure that you keep the car alive, because no matter how fast you drive for one lap, if you can't keep it the same for the rest of the laps, there's no point keeping that fast lap, is it now? But right now, Shrosh Dragon fighting for that position, keeping it alive at P8, but definitely Vossi right now in P9 still hounding on the back of the Mustang. Pretty hard to get a position.
Yeah, you were spot on there earlier. Consistency is key here, especially in a 1 hour race. There's still a lot of time left, and there's still enough time for a lot of these drivers who have been caught in unfortunate incidents to make it back up. Or, if you're a bit too cocky, maybe a lot more time to screw up.
Well, it depends on the mindset of the driver. Some will learn from their mistakes and, you know, make adjustments there. But at the end of the day, you gotta remember, when you're racing, everything is running on adrenaline. You're pushing the absolute limits. You know, emotions boil over. Some might just get a little bit too angry. They'll start to do things that they wouldn't do on the regular, and it's usually why the best of the best usually drive in a very calm and collected manner. Even though they might get a little bit hot-tempered here and there, it's usually short bursts, and they'll get back into the groove. And you gotta make sure you have that, or else you just drop like a stone on every race, and it's not gonna be beneficial for everyone. Oh, it's gonna be a lot of incidents.
Oh,
Adam.
no, that's Norlim. Yeah, that's Adam
unfortunate.
Norlim once again, the pole sitter in the AM class, seeing themselves in multiple incidents, and that Mustang looks wrecked. As we look at the replay, let's see what happened over here.
Might have gone wide on the Schumacher S, or might have accidentally taken someone else. We'll see in a bit, but that looks like Fabio right on the inside. Oh, that is not a good place for an overtake, the two of them. Oh, that's too much on the curve. Oh,
no. Yeah,
that's
unfortunately, Saul having another incident with another driver here. Saul getting a streak of bad luck, unfortunately. Seeing them tumble down to the bottom of the silver class field. But if their qualifying time was anything to go by, I feel like they'll make up a lot as we look at RS Volpes and Blade Wolf Kagekio going side to side as Blade Wolf gets past no, that was Sad Cat. Yep, whoops, that was, yeah, my bad. It's pretty tricky to differentiate these two Lambos, but yeah, that was sad, Ken. My bad. And there's Horaz, but yeah, Blade Wolf just getting past.
Yeah, Blade was definitely very confident in the Aston Martin here. We've been here so many times, and especially Blade with the Aston Martin here, that it's basically for him. It's just a regular schedule for him, and it definitely has shown that his race pace, his consistency around here, through years of driving here, is showing really well that they can keep it alive, keep it consistent, and it's going to be amazing. And it seems like there's going to be another Code 50 coming. I'm not sure what has happened with some of the drivers, but we're going to have another Code 50 coming on right now, as everyone's going to be on pit limiter.
Yeah, I believe it has something to do with Benavides and Oily Rags, because I did see my radar. There was a big cluster over in the forward curve. If we can get a replay of that, that would be great. But at the moment, we are returning to racing speed as green flag resumes racing here. And you can see Lily Armstrong getting a jump. That Porsche really brutal on acceleration, but so is Asher Goat on the rear of Adrian Newt. But it looks like Newt has held them off quite sufficiently, and it's going to be our usual duel with Armstrong and Wareham once again.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see how these drivers behave between Code 50s, because you can see the racing just stays close, but then you see the nuances of how do the drivers break on Code 50. Do they just let the perimeter ride it out, or do they find ways to circumvent, maybe inch out here and there? Although we might think about it, the race control definitely has it all under control in terms of making sure drivers don't gain any sort of advantage out of it, but you still can't deny the fact that there is some sort of lag between human reactions between these drivers on Code 50, and that definitely shows with the fact that P1 to P7, I think that's what I'm seeing right now, all on the same train. That's how close the racing is right here, racing for Nürburgring.
Yeah, I can see Wareham and Armstrong having quite the tussle as Newt runs away. These two are just on each other's throats at this point. Wareham and Armstrong, they've been battling for quite a lot of times, especially last week in Brands Hatch.
Yeah, it's nice to see that the fight is still ongoing, race after race, and it's gonna be nice. It's gonna be interesting to see how these two settle their differences on track, hopefully without any incidents, because that's usually what we like the most in racing. But sometimes accidents may happen, but given that they're plats and pros, they're definitely going to be very interesting to see how things go.
As Wareham seems to have settled things up at the moment as we look into a replay, and I believe this is what cost our Code 50. It was Saul again, I think. Unfortunate for Fabio Saul, was it? Oh no, not again! And there goes Saul, rather unfortunate. Oh no, hold the brakes, buddy. Oh. Yeah, I think, yeah, Saul again on another streak of bad luck. Unfortunate for them, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's sad to see that they've been caught out with incidents, but that's unfortunately the downside of having such a big grid with us. It's good to see all of us racing, but sometimes we just get caught up in incidents, and it's going to be unfortunate. It's going to be a very unfortunate week for Saul, and we'll hope they get to recover any sort of points they get, as well as hope to see them back at it next week if they decide to just take a break for this round, take it as their drop round and get back again for next week.
As you can see, Chris Gator, who had an incident earlier in turn 1, can he get this move done? Swingley conceding just a bit, and that lets Chris through. They have made it overtake into turn 1, and will keep that position and will be on the climb, as they will have to face a lot of more silver drivers ahead of him.
Yeah, it won't be as easy for the rest of the class though, because everyone's fighting for positions, and some of them might also be looking at the overall class as well. But I wonder why Swingley's wipers are on. I'm not sure what's going on in that car, but they definitely don't need the wipers right now. It's dry as ever on this track. We don't expect any sort of rain here, but definitely interesting to see that the wipers are on full swing. But Vossi though, still fighting very close behind Sosh, not letting go of the Mustang. They definitely have to figure out our strategy though before the pit window enters. Do they want to stay behind them, or is Sosh giving him a good tow to the car behind? It might be beneficial to just stay behind Sosh if they don't want to get the position, but they'll just happily enjoy the tow that Sosh is giving them.
But it looks like Vossi is quicker than Sosh in a lot of sections. But that Mustang with great top speed is just pulling off. So it's going to be really tricky because Vossi's Porsche is the polar opposite, as I said before in free practice, the polar opposite of a Mustang. So Vossi will have to capitalize on the Porsche strengths and minimize the weaknesses of the Porsche.
Yeah, it's if the gap is just right though, they'll be able to basically have a good gap between have a good inter-track relationship between the two of us, but it's gonna depend on how they figure things out though. But Oilirax fighting positions with Phil right now for a P21. Unfortunate to see them very far back on the grid right now, but that's unfortunate because Phil had a drive-through for the race start. But currently, really nice battle between the two of them. They might have the move done in turn 1 if they can get a good exit here. Oilirax in the Aston Martin, good on power, but a little bit of a turbo lag if you're not in the right gear. So definitely gonna be an interesting fight for the Mustang. So hopefully they get a good ride, but oh, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I was about to say Beck looking into Oilirax, but not quite happening here in turn 1. Beckavold will have to find another way around. That Mustang, as you said, a very powerful car, so definitely that around these straight line sections, he can find a way around Oilirax, but it's going to be a tough call.
Yeah, and you gotta make sure to not extend the track limits too much as well. Drivers are reminded they only get 3 cut warnings before they get a drive-through. So if some of the drivers already have a drive-through, you do not want to get a second drive-through now, do you, in this race? And some of the drivers that do not have any sort of drive-through, you want to make sure that you keep your track cuts close to you, because any sort of incidents between drivers, it'll be a good time to at least sacrifice one of your track cuts just to make sure that you don't get heavily penalized when things don't go your way.
Speaking of the race, we have Adrian Newt still leading the overall field despite being a gold class driver. I reckon Newt feels like they do have the pace to gun it for the overall position, and Newt is running away from the field. As you can see, a considerable gap between them.
Oh,
and
no.
that's Lewandowski spinning and slowly rejoining the track. That's a pretty safe rejoin with not a lot of people around them. I wonder what happened.
It might be a little bit of spin here and there, especially in that part of the track. I think that's just a little bit of spin. Might have been pushing a bit too hard. Let's see. Is that the curb? No, that's not the curb. Ooh!
I believe it's under power. The Ferrari has quite the turbo lag, so when that turbo kicks in, you're gonna have to brace for impact. I can tell from experience for sure, being the second only Ferrari in the field if it weren't for my technical issues.
Well, you gotta remember as well that GT3 cars have pretty strong TC, and it's kind of a shame if you don't use the TC to your advantage. At the end of the day, the cars are pretty capable and self-correcting when it comes to having issues on power. It's been a while since I had any sort of spins in TC unless I'm on a different sim. So it's definitely interesting to see that they have spun it around. That's Mercedes Arena of all corners. So hopefully they get a good rejoin and all that, and hopefully they get the recovery in the race. But for now, the fight for P21 continues as Oilirax is still in front of Philip, but they can't stay there for long though if Philip wants to regain any sort of track positions in this race, because they're definitely getting a little bit held up behind the Aston Martin in front of them.
Yeah, here is Rags versus Beckavold, Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. And it looks like it's just settled down for now. But that Mustang really close on the brakes, really aggressive. That Mustang, that is just close. But at the moment, Beckavold not being unable to find a gap. And that's Lewandowski again, unfortunately, into Coca-Cola curve. And I believe, and that's Benavides. So we have a lot of drivers in the AM class not having the greatest of times here in the Nürburgring.
Yeah, it's unfortunately. Oh, there's going to be a Code 50 coming in soon. So definitely nice to see that the Code 50 is working and helping a lot of the drivers having issues. But, drivers got to make sure they don't gain any sort of advantage through all this. Vossi immediately returned back any sort of advantage to gain about this. But nice to see the drivers are respecting the Code 50s. And I'm glad that the Code 50s are having a good effect on sort of incidents between the drivers.
Yeah, I believe everything at Code 50 went mostly fine. We had a chicken, and there is Parker Olsen on the inside of Nicholas Zahn. It's going to be Nicholas Zahn with a cutback. and once again taking that position.
See, both drivers' teammates though, between the two of them, fighting for positions here. Definitely no love to be had between the two of them. At least some respect has to be had, but that's nice to see that we don't just give team orders between the drivers though. But currently, Oras fighting for P6 for what's it P4 against Sadcat. Sad to see that Oras is slowly leading off pace, but doesn't mean that they can't continue to keep it ahead. But they have to make sure they keep it alive though. Currently, Sadcat's just right behind them, and behind them immediately is Chris. It's up to them to make sure that they either get Chris by as soon as possible, or let Chris stay behind and have to fight it out in front of them.
Yeah, the two white and blue Lambos duking it out, so keep in mind equal machinery, so they both have the same strengths and weaknesses, so this is all down to the driver on capitalizing on a mistake and gaining an advantage from there on, but they'll have to do it quick because Chris the Gator is coming up close, and they'll have to settle it before or else it's too late and Chris just cuts past them and gains positions for themselves.
Well, it depends. I think Chris will definitely want to get by them as soon as possible, but they definitely don't want to be right in between the silver class fighting for positions though. But they have to get it done quick. Granny, we have about a minute and 50 seconds remaining before pit window opens. I think Chris might think of a good idea to just pit in early to get away from the silver class, but if we pit in too early, the problem is that the pole position drivers will be going past you, and that's when the blue flag comes up. That's when you have to get drivers by. Then you have to think about, are you gaining time from having an undercut this early, or will you be losing times to the blue flag behind them? That's going to be a strategy they have to think about. As Philip sending it at the chicane, it's going to be having a move at Oily Rex. Will they have a good exit though? Seems like it might be possible, but no, the Aston just has a better exit here, but doesn't mean that the toe from the Aston Martin might have a better move. But Philip staying close though, that seems like it's closing, but Ollie closing on the inside. Will that move stick though? On the outside goes Philip. I don't think that's going to be a move done, but will the cutback happen? That's going to be the target for Philip, but it's not going to be a move done, and it's going to be JPEG right in front of them in the way against fighting for positions right now.
Yeah. Oily defending nicely against Philip Beckenvold. That was some great racing between the two, I believe, gold class drivers, but they'll have to get past this AM driver, or else things will shake up even more. JPEG might have to consider, because they're in a comfortable AM class lead. They do not want to get murdered by these two gold class drivers hounding against each other. They do not want to get into their crossfires.
Well, you say that, but I know that JPEG definitely does not care if they're in the lead or not. They will fight for overall positions, and Chris is going to be on the outside. All Sadcat, that's going to lose Sadcat a bunch of time, but it's going to be the same for Oras as well. Oras might want to think smart and just let Chris by when the time shows up. Definitely will mean that the time loss between all of them will be better. But right now, still fighting for P20. All the gaps closing. They got to leave a car space behind them. They've juked Ollie into breaking late. That's going to be a good move by Philip, but Ollie just holds it on the outside though, but no love to be happy between the two of them. Around the outside, but goes Philip. Will they be able to keep it on the outside? Yes, they would. Oh, right between the blue flag though. Oh, right coming to. Oh my god. It's going to be, tap. It's going to be, an issue. Oh, that's unfortunate.
And I think Oily Rags will have to concede that position, because as much as that was hard racing, I think that they went a bit too hard right there.
Well, I would say, as a commentator, I would consider that more of a racing incident, because in my view, it looked like Oily kind of stayed the position, but Phil definitely did turn it pretty hard on Oily to have that pit maneuver happen. But at the end of the day, we're not stewards. We can only see what we see. So it's going to be an interesting investigation if it's ever get brought up by the drivers at the stewards report when the race ends.
Looking into our silver class battle, this is a fight for P2 between Blade Wolf and Caleb Mooney in that BMW and Aston Martin. The two, one is British but has a German engine, and one is thoroughbred German, as the Aston Martin just hounds down and defends for that BMW. And I've said this a lot of times before, but Blade Wolf, an excellent defender. They will be a tough nut to crack for Caleb Mooney.
Yeah, definitely very hard, tough nut to crack. Definitely Blade Wolf, one of the best defensive drivers out there. It's always a blast to fight against them. It's always an achievement to get past Blade, so it's nice to see that everyone's still having Blade there as the token silver driver that will be the difficult nut to crack, and it's gonna stay. But that just means Skylar is gonna have a very comfortable lead in front, 2 seconds ahead of Blade Wolf right now. The first time we've seen this season that Skylar's in front of them. They just have to make sure they don't mess up their pit stop, they don't mess up their pit entry, and they don't mess up their pit exit. That's going to be a very, very stable run for Skylar here in the Honda.
Yeah, but most importantly, Skylar has to tame that Honda around the circuit, which they'll find an easier time around in the Nürburgring, especially considering how difficult Grand Ass is with lots of elevation. As Ras looking into the inside of Kayla Mooney, but it's not quite, and Mooney still past Volpez. But again, I think that just peeled Mooney away from Blade Wolf and just shuffled him a little bit, so they're gonna have to regain those gaps for the battle of P2, and I believe that's a slow car. That's Olsen pointing the wrong way. Oh, a bit of a sketchy rejoin, but at least no one was around. But Olsen having an unfortunate off, and I wonder what happened. They must have spun somewhere around Mercedes. They definitely spun around the ladder bit of Mercedes Arena. Let's check that out in the replay.
Yeah, but it also means that Skylar, if you see that right before the replay, the Skylar was behind Blade Wolf. I think something happened between all of them, so not sure what has happened. I think the spun definitely has scared. Oh, too much curb for the McLaren. That's in the middle. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Oh, Skylar.
Oh, that's unfortunate for Skylar right there. A bit tap in the front. That's gonna mean damage on the Honda. And with such a temperamental car, definitely don't know why any sort of damage in front of it. It's gonna be unfortunate that Parker has spun right there and then. That just means Skylar has to fight for position, or given that the pit window's open, go for an undercut right here, right now. Save the time. Get rid of, maybe don't go for the repair if it's not that severe. Get rid of it, you know, at least you won't have a car in front of you to fight for it.
Yeah, I think, as you saw there, Ras Volpez battling pretty hard with Blade Wolf, but unfortunately, that just saw them bogging down and having Chris past them. But again, big one!
That is a pile up, that is a pile up.
Leaders! That is going to be a code 50 for sure, but oh my goodness. Our leaders in the silver class having a coming together, and a lot of these drivers coming in for full course yellow because they want to minimize their pit stop time.
Yeah, but it's definitely a very wild time there as everyone's in the pits right now from all the damages. You gotta make sure they just have no issues right here, and some of the drivers decided to keep it on the pit limiter right before the pit entry. Some will definitely want to regain some time lost there as much as they can, and unfortunately for Chris, getting caught up in the incident as well, and it's going to be the worst place to have an incident, I would say.
Okay, but out of all of that, I think it's so far Sadket and Volpez leading. It's a Lamborghini 1-2 here in the silver class, but Kagekiyo, Mooney, and Vixen have come in for their pit stops. And looking into the leaders, we still have Newt running away, and it's our dynamic duo, David Wareham and Lily Armstrong, once again duking it out for P2.
Yeah, the front class has now basically been pretty much settled. Besides, Robbie Kelly still fighting for position with Saber Kitsune, looking at the relatives right now. But it's unfortunate to see that the silver class basically boiled down to cracking a little bit under pressure, I would assume. And we'll take a look. We'll take a look at the replay just right before the incident happened, as we slowly get things sorted out to see what happened. I will assume that it's either a blue flag incident or that Blade Wolf cracked a little bit under pressure. I will assume it's a bit of both, given that there is a lap car right in front of them right now. Oh,
Schwartz
oh
a bit,
no.
Oh no, yeah, Schwartz slowing down, and it's a huge domino effect from back marker troubles.
Oh, that is unfortunate that Schwartz is in the way. Definitely a little bit too dangerous to be right there and then. Oh, the danger does not slow down right there. Keeps it alive though, Lily, right behind Damon. Damon definitely feeling the pressure right behind them. They have to decide, pit now, pit later, 3 minutes before the halfway point. It's about time you pit because, you know, it's about time where it's the halfway point. You don't gain or lose much position right here if you pit now. So it's going to be either this lap or +1 lap. That's going to be about the cutoff point for most drivers if they want a 50-50 split in terms of the stint, but some will prefer a 60-40 split that will give them a fresher tire at the end. But the Porsche that you see here, Lily basically sliding it everywhere. So it's going to be a very interesting strategy for Lily if they go for the 60-40 split.
Yeah, Armstrong really going hard on their tires. I mean, you have to at this point. You're not going to be using these tires on your second stint, so screw it, we ball and just use it all for our first stint.
I mean, it's fair. You might as well just shred the tires and give out any sort of lap time you can get. Oh, what's that? Right in the corner, on that corner. It's going to be one of the blue flag drivers, but luckily Lily able to just get past them as soon as possible and just continue on the fight with Damon.
Looks like that battle is settled down for now, but we have to be on the lookout because I feel like one of these drivers is going to come into pit lane as we head into the NGK chicane. Who is going to come in for the undercut or the overcut? And they're elected to stay out still. It's still 32 minutes remaining. I believe the optimal pit time is around 30 minutes if you're not considering either an under or an overcut.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Halfway point is definitely the time to do it if you want a good, a good strategy, a good middle ground, so at least the car's consistent on both stints. But given that you're behind traffic, it's really the best time to think about it right now, because at the end of the day, the most you're going to lose is a lap or two of grip. Sometimes the cutoff point is that sensitive where you basically lose all the grip at the last sectors, at the last 2 laps, but it's a good sacrifice to make if you're expecting to be in front at the end of the pit window and the pit cycle. So given that they are quote-unquote being held back by Damon right now, it's definitely a strategy to think about. It's definitely a strategy that they should have taken maybe a lap or 2 ago. But if this is anything to be projected by either, they'll be expecting Damon to pit in now and then go for a very fast overcut, or they'll just pit in with Damon, and that's going to be another continued 30-minute fight for them for the rest of the race.
I believe that is going to be a tricky call to make, because Wareham is defending nicely. They might as well have to resort to the undercut with how valiant that defense is on that McLaren. But again, thinking about it, as Wareham might be wearing their tires, so Armstrong. It's quite a they're facing a tough decision right now, but it's leaning towards Armstrong doing an undercut.
Yeah, the gap is definitely increasing a little bit by little bit. Not sure if that's because of pace or that, as I was saying, it might be the fact that the tires are shredded. It's going to be a pit for Lily, and it's going to be a very strong outlap by Damon to cover the undercut if that's going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see how things go as drivers slowly coming in for the pits. I think that is who's that coming in for the pits in McLaren? That's Adrian Newt in P3, in pole coming in for their pits. So without damage, it's going to be a very simple pit stop, so long as they don't get if they don't have issues on their pit entry. So we'll see how they end up as the pit cycle continues on.
Yeah, as your GOAT, definitely committing to the overcut right now. They have to lock in and set the fastest laps. They have to hold on to dear life.
Oh my god.
There's a bump between our Lampos in the silver class. Auraz and Sadket, but thankfully Auraz staying behind. It's a bit of a close call. And yep, I think Auraz knew where the pit speed limit was, and Sadket was slowing down a bit too early.
Yeah, definitely a very dangerous entry here, but that's the thing about practicing for pit entry. You have to know where the pit entry box is. If not, you're going to catch a lot of people off guard. No one's going to wait for you. It's still a very valid racetrack until the pit board is crossed. So it's definitely unfortunate that there's an incident there. The stewards might take a look at it, but that's why you got to practice for it, and it is what it is, I assume. But Vossi right now in P5, fighting with Skylar. Is that Skylar? I think Skylar's a lap down because of the repairs and all that in the Honda right now. So Vossi currently in P5 without having not pitted just yet. So definitely pushing it really hard. Still behind Josh Dragon though. Unfortunately, unable to get by, but Josh being so close to him should be easy on the fuel as well.
And here is Wilton Foxdale, I think, committing to the overcut. And looking at my radar, I think Azure has come into the pit, so this is going to be the turning point of this race. Will Wareham will Wareham come out ahead of Newt and Armstrong, or will they be compromised by their overcut? Let's find out.
I don't think they'll be ahead of Newt, but it will be a very close fight between Damon as well as Lily. So I think that's more of the car that we'll be expecting to be ahead. So definitely right now as Newt comes down into the Michelin curves before Warsteiner. So still a fair bit behind, but Newt's pretty experienced. Unless they really did a catastrophic pit error, I will assume that Newt will be pretty much covered. It's more on it's more on the fact that will they be ahead of Lily or not. That will be the main question I'll be more curious about.
It's going to be a really close one. As you saw, Adrian Newt getting past the NGK chicane into the Coca-Cola curve. Wareham still in the pit lane. It's about to come out just now. Will they come out ahead of Newt, or will it be a close battle? And it looks like Newt is past, but what about Armstrong?
I think that's not gonna make it. I think they might have a fight here. And oh no, actually it'll be in front of Armstrong. The gap is still there. I think the gap's actually bigger than Pre-4, so it's gonna be another long fight for Lily for P2 here in this class.
And that gap grew for sure, but Wareham will have to consider warming up those tires because Armstrong is hounding right now, trying to close down the gap. Oh, and almost sliding. Power slide down there, and it's 3 wide for our drivers, getting past backmarkers and Zwingli having to slow down and let Zan by it. It's a bit sketchy, and yes, Zwingli unfortunately getting caught up in backmarker shenanigans, having to settle for P20.
It's a big traffic jam right here at Nürburgring. It's going to be a close incident right there, but definitely the backmarkers trying their hardest to let the drivers by, but definitely not the best time to hear. Will that be a bump drive? No, that's not going to be a bump drive, but it's going to be Sidecat compromised on the exit because they're getting held up by a blue flag driver, and they're still fighting for positions right here. Not sure what has happened between. Oh, that's not a blue flag position. That's more on P17 fighting for positions because they haven't pitted just yet.
Yeah, Sidecat winning a bit losing to turn 1 and let Zwingli pass, but this battle is not over. They still have yet to get past that back marker, and it's going to be Zwingli trying to hold on to this position, but it's going to be a tough battle between them and the Lamborghini of Sidecat as they still have to face this back marker. It's oh my goodness. Oh, it's going to be quite close, squeezing just a little bit, and no, this is not a back marker. This is actually for position, and Benavides has yet to make their pit stop, so it's going to be a close call between these three, but it's Zwingli passed, and I think that will be Sidecat passed as well, but it has to go down to the Dunlop hairpin.
Well, that's not just yet because the GTR has better power compared to the Huracan, but the Huracan has better grip here, but it's gonna be very nervous for Sidecat to be fighting with the AM driver here because the AM driver definitely can be able to do it because of machinery, but definitely unable to do it, unable to hold on because of a better experience by Sidecat, but Sidecat definitely strongly hurt by being held up by the GTR here. They definitely have to think about a better way to get it run by, or else they're gonna get slowed down so much that they're gonna be compromised for the silver champ.
And not only, I believe it's not only compromising Sidecat, this could be compromising Benavides' strategy because by holding up this field, I think they're just giving up time to the others in the AM class, but I think everyone's that's a big contact from Sidecat, and Benavides is facing the wrong way round.
Oh, that's unfortunate. It's really comes down to the inexperience of driving, racing in multi-class. You gotta really think about who you're actually fighting for. There was no point fighting for a class that you're not even fighting for. Why are you a M driver fighting for a silver class? That's basically not a really good strategy in my opinion, because there's no point fighting for a position that basically ends up being nothing. But unfortunately, when you're inexperienced, you don't really think about these kind of things when you're racing. Unfortunately, just has the issue of being compromising other people's races.
I have a feeling that Benavides wanted to come in, so he slowed down to peel right, but Sidecat did not take that into account. It's quite a close incident to call, but Oily Rags, one of the drivers that has yet to pit here in the Aston Martin, chasing the slipstream of their teammate in the blue Lexus. And no, yep, I think that's Rags coming in. And so far, the only ones who haven't made their pit stop, as far as I'm aware, are Aiden Larson and Nicholas Zahn.
Yeah, both drivers are the remaining, and they only have 3 minutes remaining to get this the pit stop sorted out. There's really not much point to having a pit stop this late, but you know, at the end of the day, it's their strategy. So long as they get it done before the pit window ends, they're definitely golden. But Zahn might be giving Philip a good tow right now in front with the Lexus though, because they definitely need it to get any sort of recovery drive here. But lucky for Philip, with so much incidents happening in front of them, they definitely can recover some points, if not you know, as much as it could, given that there's basically the grid's just basically shuffled more than we were expected early on.
And as Oily Rags waits to the pit lane, it's going to be quite a long time, 30 seconds. And keep in mind, they did take some damage, so that's going to be an extra time if they do consider repairing that damage. But I think Oily Rags should be coming out just now, and that should be our third to last driver to make their pit stop. And now it's up to Larson and Zahn to decide when in this 2-minute time frame should they come in for the pit stop, because there's too little time. At this point, they should come in now.
Well, yeah, true. It's gonna be interesting to see if they even make it to the pit window. I think so long as Aiden has been in the pit and Zahn is in the pit, so lucky for both of them, they'll be cleared. I think that's gonna be a strategy call to have Phil basically towed by Zahn, but right now both in the pits for repairs and sort of fuel change and tire change. So it's gonna be everyone settle in for the positions for the remaining 20 minutes of this race.
Yeah, so that is basically everyone making their pit stop as far as I'm aware, and it's going to be Newt back in the lead of this race with JPEG trailing behind as a back marker.
Yes, Zahn slowly gets going on the pit lane. That's gonna be Zahn slowly following behind, but Aiden though in P7, strong positions for the Lexus coming in compared to the rest of the grid. But the front train that we see early on in the race has slowly basically fallen apart. Basically a 2-second gap between Newt and Damon, but Damon still having really very strong behind them within a second of each other before they have a 3-second gap to Saber and then a 3-second gap to Robbie. So definitely all fight for positions with JPEG being in the way, luckily getting out of the way as soon as possible. Luckily for them, it is a blue flag, so JPEG definitely has given the position away fairly. And currently the fight for P2 still continues on strong, as the Porsche shows to be the stronger car here compared to the McLaren.
Yeah, but it's been I think it's been 40 minutes, but Armstrong still hasn't yet got past Wareham. So Wareham proving to be a tough nut to crack for the Porsche, but I feel like Lily will find a way past, because they are just hounding on that rear end. It just takes one mistake and Armstrong will pounce.
Yeah, definitely a far stark difference compared to when my first time racing with Damon. Damon used to be a pretty easy nut to crack in terms of putting the pressure on. So nice to see that they definitely have learned to be grounded, being able to basically fight for their positions and stay calm and collected. What unfortunate though for Skylar, supposedly P1 in the grid, unfortunately Repair is now down P1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, P6 in the silver class. Unfortunate for them, they've fallen pretty far down on the standings just from repairs.
Yeah, quite unfortunate for our silver class pole sitter, am I right? I think Skylar was our silver class pole sitter, but yeah, rather unfortunate for them. And it's going to be again Armstrong versus Wareham. I lost count at this point.
Part 60 at this point.
Yeah, but Armstrong still fighting a way, still trying to pry past that McLaren, but unfortunately it doesn't look like it's quite it. They'll have to in 18 minutes if they do want to prove themselves in this championship battle. Yeah,
but I think Damon will definitely be very content being in front of Lily right now. I think for them at least, Newt is not really an idea in their mind right now for any sort of title contentions, regardless if we're fighting for overall or class positions. Even though basically Damon's not in the same class as Adrian, but it does mean that they just you want to make sure that you can get any sort of points from anyone else to run away from the championship. But I think they will be pretty happy to just keep Lily behind them to just continue securing positions for this race.
As we see our silver class leader after all that pre-pit lane kerfuffle, it's Kalen Mooney who got away the least severe in all those incidents from that pit lane incident. As Benavides comes out again, I believe for repairs, I think.
Might be for repairs, might be for drive-thrus. I've actually not seen the drive-thru penalties happening recently, because at the end of the day, you gotta remember, you're only allowed 3 track cut warnings before the 4th one gets you a drive-thru penalty. Drivers have to really take care of the allowances for track cuts to basically not have a drive-thru penalty given to them. But if you do have it, you're required to serve it within 3 laps. So, you know, things might happen. They don't get reset once you're in the pit window, so you have to make sure you carry all those 4 track cuts along with you for the entire hour.
I believe you mean 3 track cuts, because a 4th cut will give you a penalty, and I kind of like to see it this way. You can cut the track at least 3 times. Not egregiously, of course, but you do have that freedom if you've been a good boy all this race and you kind of want some extra time. But again, that's a bit against the spirit of racing, so I tend to refrain from doing that.
Well, for me, I feel like it's more of a allowance for incidents more than anything. It's more of like if you get pushed off, and why is that? Why is Swingley? What happened to him? Let's say definitely an incident early on. Not sure what has happened. We'll take a look in a bit as the replay slowly gets loaded in. Maybe a little bit too ambitious on the chicane, so I'm expecting to be, as the wipers continue to flow on the Porsche. I think it's, instead of pushing in rain, it's definitely trying to push away all the gravel that's been pushing out on the track. Oh, that's gonna be a spin by Swingley.
I think that's pretty much a classic Porsche moment. Quite loosey-goosey if it catches you out of nowhere. But yeah, speaking of the wipers, I think that is a tradition for Swingley.
So long as it doesn't hinder them, I guess. But that's the thing about the Porsches. It needs to be pretty stable on entry. If you don't keep it stable on entry, you definitely get yourself taken out. I definitely feel like that is one of the characteristics that you have seen by Swingley performing the Porsche ritual, that is just pushing the rear a bit wide.
And Oily Rag still on the rear end of Zephyr, trying to find a way past. And it's going to be quite close, but unfortunately, Oil Rags, having faced a lot of incidents, is down here in P17. That is still points though, however, for overall. But in terms of the goal class, I kind of lost count, but they're not high up there, it's safe to say.
Aww. But yeah, right now we're seeing Sad Cat still finding positions here, but Oily though in the midst of the silver class. It's gonna be very annoying for them because they really want to get by everyone, but everyone's kind of sort of fighting for positions, sort of not. So right now Zephyr kind of halfway defending, halfway not. You don't want to compromise your line for a different class driver, but at the same time, you have a race to finish as well. So it's either you get it done quick or I'm not gonna let you by. And Zephyr, a little bit of mistakes here and there, has decided, you know what, I'll just let Oily by just to make sure that I don't get any issues here. But given that Oily's on the inside, that basically opens the door for Skylar right on the inside. That's compromised Zephyr though. Zephyr's not gonna be happy. They better make sure to get a total. But Skylar on the inside, will they make a lunge move? They better not do it too late though, because you have a car in front that's gonna get covered. But Skylar on the outside, will that happen to Oily, that letting Zephyr by and covers the inside for Oily? It's gonna be 3 wide coming into turn 1.
Oh, no!
That's gonna be a
oh no! It's
Oily.
gone wrong! It's Oily Rag
so
Zephyr! Oh! Yeah, that is a 3 wide gone wrong for sure. And yeah, it's down to a lack of communication, and unfortunately that was huge, and that sees Zephyr tumbling down the order. Yeah.
Oh, the Porsche though, just hanging on alive. But yeah, that's the thing about fighting with multi-class. You gotta basically be pretty firm with the other class. Either you overtake me or you don't. Unfortunately, because of mistakes from every driver that was there, because of pressure and all that, unfortunately, everyone just cracking under pressure, that has caused a pretty annoying racing incident, I would say.
Yeah, that is you are spot on there. It was a really unfortunate race incident. 3 wide, and they just nudge into each other. It's domino effect from there on. But Oily Rags continuing to fight on, still behind Zephyr as we speak. But I think Oily Rags definitely knows his way past. He just has to wait for that opportunity once again.
Or they could have the opportunity to went by, or they could have, not messed up early on and have any sort of issues. And that's P29 going off a little bit there at the Michelin curve, but recovering just well into Warsteiner, so definitely no issues right there. But Sadcat though, I think going a little bit wide there into the Schumacher, the NGK chicane, so recovering a little bit there, but unfortunately for them, slowly dropping off on the grid, and definitely cracking a little bit under pressure as fatigue starts to set in, as we have 12 minutes remaining into this race.
And it looks like it's 12 minutes on the clock remaining, and Oily Rag still behind Zephyr, trying to find a way past. But looking at the race so far, it's been pretty impressive. Everyone's been clean, all things considered. We did not have a big one on the opening lap. And yeah, overall, I'd say this race was a pretty agile. No, that's unfortunate. That was huge damage for Chris. Yeah, I think that's down the hairpin. No, that's a spinner.
Pushing a little bit too wide. I assume that they have definitely pushed it very, very wide at Valvoline curve. That's usually what happens when you push the car very wide there. And if you tap on the brakes, panic braking for a forward curve, right, you're definitely gonna spin out. And I think that's gonna be what happened to the AMG. But unfortunately, we don't see the full picture, so definitely might have had some damage given that the front bonnet's a little bit off the latch. So unfortunately for Chris, a lot of incidents has caused them to be not that far up in the competitive grid.
Again, Armstrong still struggling to find a way past Wareham. Wareham putting up a really solid defense here. Armstrong has to act fast if they want to get past and save their championship hopes, because it's only 10 minutes remaining, and Armstrong almost running into Wareham right there, but a bit too aggressive on the brakes, perhaps, and that's not going to be optimal for Armstrong as they continue to stay behind the McLaren.
Yeah, Philip, the defending from Coburn right behind P19, but also as Swingley in front to contend for positions. The Mustang has a very good exit. The Porsche or Swingley definitely bound by tire wear. I think that's gonna be the front tire the rear tire very glazed by the Porsche from spinning everywhere. So that's why you see them losing a lot of time. But Oily finally getting past Zephyr. Zephyr's definitely not happy about the things that have transpired for the race though, so it's gonna be unfortunate that they have any sort of incidents here. But the race goes on, and Philip on the inside of Swingley. Will they make the move stick though? Swingley getting spooked by Philip coming down into the Mercedes arena, but I think that's gonna be the move stuck. But who's that behind them? That's gonna be Colburn.
That's Colburn.
Getting caught out.
Colburn. And
yeah, but that's doesn't make it though. It's just barely behind them. That would have been nice for Sadcat to just follow behind, but I think Sadcat just couldn't be there just in time for the opportunity to come. But that's gonna have to do in a bit as they try to find a way through.
I'm looking at the comments right now, and I also have a feeling that Swingley is struggling with their tires after that spin and tumble they had in that chicane. So they're just losing grip everywhere. You can really see them drifting on that hairpin. That's suboptimal. And Sadcat trying to find their way past. It could be the Schumacher S, a high-speed corner. Grip is very important right here. And Sadcat, with all of that grip, the luxury of fresh rubber and a powered Lamborghini, unfortunately, doesn't get quite past yet.
Yeah, I think Sadcat just had Swingley right in the way as they were going through Schumacher as she went Swingley's right in the defensive line though. So definitely have to find a better way to make an overtake. They definitely could make it here if they can get a good exit at at Van Bogen as well as the NGK chicane. But that's going to be Swingley on the inside though. They have to do it brave on the outside the way that I did it last time around in Silver Champ, and they definitely has to make the move stick. Amazing move by Sadcat on the outside and coming down into the Coca-Cola curve. Very nice move. Make sure to take advantage of the more extra grip they have on the fresher tires.
Yeah, that was an absolutely brave move from Sadcat over there. And as you see, we have a yellow. That is, oh no, that is,
oh no,
that is Sosh and JPEG, and I wonder if they had a coming together. It looks,
seems like it. We'll look at the replay in a bit, but I think that's gonna be Shosh's car basically wrecked. We'll hopefully get some sort of repair done, or they might just bear it out for the remaining 10 minutes, but that's going to be unfortunate by Shosh Dragon. A bit strong on the curves there. First chicane, second chicane. Oh, that's JPEG. Oh no.
I think JPEG kind of got loose on the exit of Schumacher S, and unfortunately Sosh was a victim in the spin that JPEG had. Now the Porsche, we did say, gets quite unstable the less fuel it has, and it looks, and from the cases we've seen from Swingley and JPEG, it looks like it's hindering their pace right now. And I wonder if Armstrong is suffering from that case, that will hinder their efforts of getting past Wareham.
Yeah, Shosh Dragon right here, significant steering damage given that. Oh, where do you want to go? Oh, thank God. But you can see here the steering angle they have to put just to keep the car straight. That is going to be unfortunate for Shosh as they try to just find their way against traffic just to get by and get back into the pit lane. Oh, that's not the best time to be there, but they'll take the grass just to get away from the stuff. But Chris luckily avoiding Shosh Dragon. Shosh just limping it back into the garage. Not the most recommended route to go back. We recommend drivers to return back to the pits through the pit menu. But, you know, it's up to them to drive it back, and unfortunately, I think it's going to be a very, very long repair for Shosh Dragon, unfortunately, through the incidents of JPEG.
I think that is it for any of Sosh Dragon's efforts. Unfortunately, that's just tough luck. I mean,
it's very tough luck.
You were caught in a really unfortunate spin out of your control. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really tough luck. What's not tough luck though is Adrian just running away from the race. 5 seconds gap between Adrian as well as Damon. Basically just cruising along at this pace. So long as they don't mess up the tires, so long as they don't have any incidents with any sort of blue flag incidents, they don't have to worry. But Alexander though, being attacked by Aiden though, covers the inside as much as they could. Aiden has to go on the outside though. I think a little bit compromised from the fact that they got boxed in, but side by side they go on to turn one. Will Alexander keep it in front? I think that's going to be still in front for now as they come in and has to tackle the Mercedes arena. But that means Alexander has to bear position here. A little bit of tap on the bumper, but that means that they can still fight for positions. But the tapping still continues on as they remain in the race.
My goodness, this battle between the two Lexuses, or Lexi, however you say it, but they're just really on each other's throats right now. The Lexus the Blue Shark E-Racing Lexus of Vandervoort trying to hold on against Aiden Larson, and is doing such an effort, going offline, trying to cover them off, and I think Vandervoort is doing a pretty great job at that at the moment, but I don't think it's going to last long.
We'll see in a bit, and that's done. That's unfortunate. I think Alexander might be having a little bit of talk, because given the flashing, I think there's a bit of a tap that might have happened there.
Let's find out. As I think Aiden Larson going for the cutback, I assume. There we go, powered down, just slipstream, and Larson will definitely have the inside line for this one as he overtakes. No, I think, yeah, Vandervoort going a bit wide, unfortunately compromising their entry, and and that's Larson through, and I think it was just hard and fair racing.
It is hard fair racing, but I got a feeling that also Aiden kind of forced their way through it by squeezing a little bit on the inside. Although I would say, at that rate, I'd do the same as well. But at the end of the day, we're all allowed to complain here and there. So definitely nice to see that they're still fighting for positions. And it's not done yet. There's still 4 minutes remaining in this race. They definitely have to push it as hard as they could. Maybe get the position back if they crack under pressure.
Yeah, you're not alone, Nick. I would definitely complain about that too, but Yeah, and SXC Swingly Tokyo drifting across the Valvoline curve. Those tires are toast at the moment, and Sadket is trying to find a way around the sliding, drifting Swingly. But Swingly doing all things considered, holding off a great job against the Lamborghini.
I think it's more of Sadcats a little bit traumatized from the incidents they had today, so they're definitely on the wary side and just not power through most of it as you usually should. As you usually do in sim racing. So definitely see when Swingly sliding a little bit, slam on the brakes a little bit, just to make sure they don't get killed in the process. But right now, Kowlin right at the back of Parker also fighting for the last points position. I think that's the last of the top 10s. For overall positions, so nice to see that the McLaren's fighting hard with the BMW. It won't be for class positions though, but it will be nice to see them being in the top 10 for overall.
Mooney is in the class lead, so I don't think they should sweat a bit. They shouldn't be focusing too much on the battle, because that could in turn compromise them. An incident would also can just consider that game over. But if Mooney thinks they do have the pace to get ahead, then by all means, they can try as much as they like.
Yeah, wonder what happened there between Swingly, Zephyr, and Sadcat, given that Swingly's right ahead of Zephyr right now. Definitely might have been either Zephyr sliding in or Sadcat. We'll take a look if we could, but we'll see in a bit in terms of, I'm not sure what happened between all of them. But it's gonna be the chicane all over again, isn't it? Let's see here.
Oh no, don't tell me. Swingly, is he going to have Porsche issues again? Oh, a bit noisy, but I think it's Sadcat compromising and Zephyr going wide. So I think Sadcat compromised both drivers compromised their exit, but it's Zephyr that came off better. And oh my goodness, that's a slide from Mooney. Oh no, please, you have the silver class lead. It's not worth it, buddy.
I think they just got caught off by how much later Parker forgot to brake. I think everyone's just being a little bit drained from being a little bit fatigued from racing here for an hour. The Nürburgring is definitely not a very easy track to race for an hour, and it really shows drivers have to push it pretty much on the limit. It's a very long track. You have to be pretty precise. It's not as technical as Brands is in terms of how small the track is, but it's still pretty tiring, and it really shows drivers just missing braking markers here and there, missing the chicane here and there. And you gotta remember, the race is not done. We still have a minute remaining, and before the first place driver crosses the line, you still have to finish the lap. And before then, you're still in the race. You gotta make sure you stay alive.
I think at this point they'll go for one more lap, because in my radar I see Newt coming across the chicane. Will they have? I think they definitely will have enough fuel for one lap. But yes, this will be the final lap here in Nürburgring. As soon as Newt crosses the corner and passes the start-finish straight, one more lap to go.
White flag should be out. Yep, we get the announcement for leaders coming in for the final lap. So it's going to be now or never for Lily to basically send it on the inside. But, oh no, that's going to be, thank God, not in the way for the drivers in front. Lily would not be happy from the fact that the lap car decided to come in for a little bit, but immediately decided to get away from him. But it's going to be now or never. I think Lily's finding alternate lines as well to get a good exit compared to Damon. That will be the time to basically have a good run and basically send it as hard as they could, because it's going to be this lap or it's going to be never. There's a few places you can make an overtake here. The Dunlop curve is one of them. That's definitely one of the times you can make an overtake. The Schumacher axis, the Michelin curve right after the Schumacher axis is a very good line. If not, your last bet will be at the NGK chicane. So these are all very important times to make an overtake. You have to do it now, you gotta do it never. And some of the drivers are taking it slow. Think about it. Those that are in front of the leaders will think about it as much as they could, but the cars behind them will definitely want to send it as hard as they could. As you see here, Lily coming down on the back of Damon at Dunlop curve. Will that make it the move stick in a bit? We'll see.
Yeah, this is Lily Armstrong's last chance to get a move done on Wareham, or else it's game, set, match for Wareham. I think Armstrong at the moment still struggling to find any gap to get into and pry open, because Wareham holding off the Porsche quite nicely and has done so for the whole hour. So kudos to them for keeping up the defense, but they have a few more corners to go. They have the NGK chicane and the Coca-Cola curve. It's going to be quite close. And speaking of close, we have Larson earlier, but I think it's game set match. I think it's Wareham's race to win for P2 as Newt crosses the line to win round 3. So and Newt has won both overall and gold class.
Nice to see them in front though. Currently, right now you'll see Kitsune finishing in P4, Robbie Kelly in P5, and Larson finishing in P6. Nice to see them finishing there. Alexander Van der Voort in P7, Rossi coming in P8. Nice to see the cars slowly crossing the grid and finally being able to take a break after a grueling hour at the Nürburgring tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mooney is about to. Let me check the map. I don't think Mooney is quite there yet, but here it's Wolf and Foxdale. I think they're the AM class winner. And as he crosses the line, that is definitely Foxdale are AM class winner from what I'm seeing in the tables, and Mooney are silver class winners. So it looks like a Blue Shark E-Racing clean sweep here in the ring.
And nice to see all the drivers slowly getting by. Oras though, where did Oras finish? I didn't even know that. Oras gonna finish P2. Nice finish for Oras, and Blade, despite all the incidents, gonna cross the line as they finally come into the chicane. Last final few drivers to actually be crossing the line in P3. Nice to see them getting a podium position on the silver class. And it's nice to see Wolfin being the first of the AMs to finish in the AM class, as well as JPEG gonna be in P2, I assume.
Yeah, unfortunate for JPEG Fox, who didn't have much luck in defending their championship battle, but I think a tougher luck was on Norlim, who finishes. I mean, he finishes on the podium, but that's not the way they want to end the race. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Being how fast they were in qualifying definitely shows that being consistent in the race is definitely more important. And unfortunately, some of the incidents he had put them down into P3 of all places.
Yeah, and I believe that will close off our race. So that is Adrian Newt, our winner overall, and they'll be sharing the podium with Damon Wareham. That's a McLaren 1-2, and now Lily Armstrong.
Yeah, nice to see everyone has decided to had a good race the time around. Some of the drivers are having the celebratory donuts, especially Blade Wolf being on the podium, especially Wolf in P1 in AM class. Congrats to all the drivers involved. It has been an amazing race to commentate, and thank you, Suzuka, for being with me tonight.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being back in the commentary box. Again, that will wrap up our racing, but next week, if I remember, round 4 is let me get the details.
It's Monza. We're going to Monza. Oh God, we're going to Monza. Oh no.
Oh boy, turn 1 shenanigans. Here we come.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting. But luckily for us, we have the code 50 set up all for drivers to basically make sure we have a good race, and hopefully we do not need to use it as much as we have to. But this is gonna be Simufur signing off. Thank you, Suzuka, for being with me in the commentary booth. I'd like to thank Denak for being the broadcaster as well for this week. We have not talked about Denak this week at all. I usually like to credit our broadcaster Denak for putting up all the graphics that we have here. It's gonna be Simufur signing off. We hope to see you guys next week at Monza. Good night.
Ta-ta.